Hello, I'm Vaughn Clement, and I am the developer of this Equipment Rental Pro application version 15. In this video help, what I'm going to be doing is explaining in this video the basic usage of the areas that you're seeing right here. In the second video, what we'll do is we'll be looking at the popover screens and their functionality and the reason for these popover screens. Let's start out with the basic things going from the top of the screen and down through this area. First of all, as you look at the screen, we're in the customer screen for your customers. A customer select area is added at the side, where as you have new customers that you're adding, by adding in this data right here, you'll be able to navigate to those based on the ID number in this area, and it'll go all the way through every new client that you add. This little icon here allows you to move between the different clients. So if I tap on this, you can see that I have another application person, in this case this client, and this is a testing record to show you how you can move between the different screens. Let's go back to the initial one, which is your customer, and in this screen what you would do in the booking main screen, which is this area, you'll put in the client information. First of all, you'll be adding the name by tapping in if you're on an iPad, or if you're in Windows or some other device, you type the information as it's seen here. For example, you'd add the address, and of course it would be the actual address. This is just a test screen to show you the inputs. You have the city, and in this case, this particular version I'm working with has pounds, the currency, but the standard one will have US dollars. The state or province in this particular case would be depending upon the country, or if you're in the US would be obviously the abbreviation for the state or province. A zip code. Email would be the first email that you would want to use for this particular client. You would also have the phone number 1 and 2. In this case, if it's a company as well as an individual, you would put the company in. You would put the zip or postal code. First of all, you would put the company address here, and then the postal code over here. You'd put the city and state and here, and then the type of business. And this is for example, if it's a commercial company or it's a small business or whatever, you could put that in there to describe this particular client, what they do. In this particular case, this looks like it's a wholesale company where they're selling wholesale items. It could be a contractor. It could be any number of different kinds of companies that are out there that are using this particular application. In this case, this would be the company email and their phone. If you put a website in for the company, in this case I just put in Google to test, if you click on this underlined item right here, anytime there's an underline, it'll open up a different screen. In this case, it'll open the browser and display google.com. Down here you have comments in this area. In this case, I'm saying replace the current data with your own data before you create a new record. What that basically means is the primary person that you're going to put in here, you would go ahead and put them in and change what is in the screen here. For example, if I typed a new piece of text in here, you would see this change over here. Now, it's a very important thing to understand that this screen is called the primary screen. What does that mean? A primary screen is where you're setting up individuals or clients, and any of the data that's added over here on this side will reflect the information based on this particular client. So for example, if I went to a different screen, in this case the testing record, that information would be different. So if I click over here, it would be all the information for this particular client. Any of the screen data that I add over here in these popovers, for example, as this pops up, shows this information. In this case, it's all the equipment that is listed for all the stuff that you add in for equipment. So for example, if I want to look at the equipment file, I could click on this and it would allow me to go to that screen to add equipment. We're not going to show that until we actually work in the popover screens, because we're going to cover the rest of the things in this screen before we move on to that one. But these are popovers that allow you to move to different screens in the application. And if they're primary screens, they're listed here. Now, if you have a secondary screen, which I'm going to show you in a second, you would go to those particular screens in order to view that information. Now, as you add data, if you're doing it for equipment listing, the equipment assignment, user-defined fields, and so forth down through these screens. What happens, that information is primary data. And in this case, you can view equipment. In this case, you can assign it for the client. So for example, if I go over here, I'm doing your customer, or whoever the name you put in there, that would be their equipment that is assigned to them. So if I look at it, you'll see that it's for this particular client because it has a booking ID of number 1. If you look over here, you'll see that that client is number 1. So there's a relationship that's created in the database, and it's called a relationship for this particular ID, and you cannot change these. They're set and locked. So as you add a new client, there will be a new ID that's created each time. So that helps you to understand how the relationship works. Now let's look a little bit at these two items right here, and then we'll be coming back to these in the next video over here. So the first thing, when you're navigating through the application, there's a list of the different screens and list screens themselves. Now let's talk a little bit about what these things do. First of all, we're in the customer booking screen, which is the primary screen in the application. So if I clicked on that, it would show this screen, or tapped on it. It would have a booking listing, which would list all the people that are in this list over here. So if you wanted to use the booking listing, you could do a search for a particular client very quickly and show that client, and then return to this screen. Now, I'm not going to cover these all in depth, but I'm going to tell you what they do. The data portal is if you are adding specific information for this client. Maybe it's something to do with their website or the client themselves. There's an actual screen where you can add that data, and it's almost unlimited what you can add in there for that client. There is a booking UDF, or user-defined fields. If this specific client has something that's of interest as far as what he does or anything, you have fields that are allowed to be added by going to the UDF screen and adding those. User-defined fields have a title, and they have an input. The input is the information you want to put in, and the title describes whatever that is in that UDF. We'll be covering that more in detail a little bit. Then there's the UDF listing, which is a list view of all the UDFs that are out there that you've created. As you add a new one, it'll add it into the list view. So you can look at the client information based on the UDFs for that particular client, or you can do a search for every UDF for one particular type. For example, say for example I put into the title is owner of company, and I had that in there, and I put the owner's name, then I could look for everyone that has the word owner in it, and it would give me all the UDFs for owners. Equipment add services. This is where we add services for the particular equipment itself, and we're adding equipment into the equipment screen, which is going to be through here, and or we can go right to the equipment screen by going to the equipment services screen, where we add all the equipment. Now we're going to go into that in more depth. I'm just going to cover it lightly. Equipment listing is just a listing of all the equipment. Work orders, you create work orders for specific equipment. So each time there's a work order that needs to be done, repair, service, or other, you can put it into the work order and create work orders to capture what you did, when you did it, and what did you do as far as service. Invoice long. This is an invoice that is a universal invoice that allows you to do 1 to the number of line items that you want to produce, either for a sale or service or whatever you want to add. Now we're going to go a little sideways on this. Expenses. In your business, if you create expenses in your business, the expense screen will trap those items for each month that you spend money, so you can track your overhead expenses. And that allows you to keep an accurate check on your expenses so you don't overrun your costs. Employees. What employees does is it allows you to do, for example, if you're doing service and you have a technician that is doing the service, you create an employee record so that you can have the information for their hourly cost that you can use in the service screen. Payment report. This is where you actually show the payments that you did to charge the client for services or the things that you want to charge them for. It could be for the rental. It can be for anything you want to be able to charge them for. Maybe you did special things like add a ball onto a vehicle so they could tow something. If they're paying for that ball, that would be an item that they would be paying for. This is the portal that shows all the items for the particular client, and you can search in a portal for individual clients or a client, in order to look at all the payments that were made by that particular client. The assignment portal is the one that you show the equipment assignments. Now it's reflected by the assignment screen over here. We're using this to add the data for assignments for the particular client, and then you can go to the portal itself and do searches for anything that you want to. And we'll talk about how to do searches in a little bit. Service material, these are the items that may have been used for service, and this can either be charged to a client, or you can capture the information for a service that you have done on your own equipment that is a part of doing business, or if you're going to charge the client for that service. Equipment booking report by date. This shows bookings that are done as far as the client is concerned that you've done, and that information is going to be shown when we get to that point. Assignment report shows all the assignments to all the customers, and you can do a find within that screen in order to capture one or more clients based on an input field that you use to capture that information in a find. Equipment billing report. The equipment billing report shows all the billings that you've done for each individual client, and you can look at a specific thing doing a find for, say, for example, a particular client or a company. So you can do a look at that for that particular company. Then there is a billing list view that shows you all the billing and the billing portal. And these are a list basically of each one of the items as far as a list view for billing, and this is the portal for the individual billings that you're doing. Equipment service listing. This is for each service that you've done as far as servicing the equipment itself, and shows you a listing of all the things you did during that service. Payment list view is all the payments that you had over here. You can look at those individual payments in a list view. Expenses, the same way. You can look at a list view for all the expenses that you've created. Then there's an expense report that runs a report that shows you all of the costs that are related to expenses. And let's see here, we've got also the employee schedule listing. You can, this is like a time clock where you're showing each employee. You may have temporary employees or full-time employees where they can log in and show the days and times that they worked. It also shows you where if you have a conflict where, say for example, a particular person is working on doing services or delivering equipment to a location, you would be able to use this screen to identify where they're at what times they're there, so you don't try to use that person or schedule them when they are not available. Okay, all of these lists are used for different things like taxes, service types, and all this. These are drop-down items that you can modify by using the list. So you have a drop-down list of these things that fill fields with preset data, and you can edit those data that you're adding in order to create a different kind of a list with different kinds of information on it. There are a lot of the stuff in here that is used and it's standardized so that you don't have to change them. It's your option to change them as you think you need to, but I'll recommend that when I show those screens of items that you don't change. Expense portal, this is the portal for the expenses. Once again, there's a report, expenses over here, and the same thing for the employees. Now, at the very top of the screen, there's a specific screen that is interesting to use for your applications. It is a calendar, and I'll go into this in detail in a different video, but basically what it does is it has a day-by-day, week, month, or year posture that it can use in order to show things that you've scheduled to be done and what client you're doing with and all the information that supports that particular task. So this is a task calendar where all the tasks that are happening on a particular day, week, or month, or year, you can identify that information and use it to work through your schedule. Okay, let's move off of this. By clicking anywhere off that drop-down screen, it'll open the screen back up so you can see everything. Menu options. What are menu options? In this particular case, they're features that allow you to do things. They're based on the name of the item that you're looking at here. And for example, if I want to add a new record in the screen here for a client, I click on the Add Record button. Now, this is a primary screen and will always be adding new records for new clients. So as you click this, it'll add a new record. I recommend do not double click on any of these. You only single click to do the task that this is asking you to do. That way you won't create, say for example, 2 records when you only wanted to add 1. Find mode. Find mode is a thing where if you click on it, what it's going to do, it's going to empty all the fields and put a little question mark in the screens of the items where you can ask information and do a find. For example, any of these fields that are in here or down here, you can search for text or a phrase, and it'll find any records that have that information that you've added in at that particular field, and also in this field down here by a phrase or a particular word. In order to do that, you start the find mode, you add your data, then you go back and click perform the find. Then it'll find all the records that are related to that particular screen. What it's going to do also is the list view will only reflect the records that you did in a find. So if you go to a list view, for example, and you want to see information, it will only show the information that is in the list view for the items that you did the search for. If you go to a list view and you know that not all the records are showing, you would go ahead and show all records again in the list view to bring back all the records that were done in the find. So it will reverse the find mode where you perform the find. It'll reverse it and put all the records back in. Now, omit a record. If you're in a list view and say, for example, you did a find, but there's one individual or two individual records or more, you can omit those records by clicking anywhere in any field on that list view on that record and say omit it. It'll disappear. If, for example, you did an omit and then you wanted to look at the records that were omitted on the screen only, then you would click this button. It'll reverse it and show, instead of all the records that are in the find, it'll only show the ones that you omitted. Exit application closes the application so that you can exit all the programming and every information that you're looking at here. App help. These are videos like this one, where if you click on this button, it's going to take you to the YouTube videos for all the different things that are in this application. Dev support. This is the developer support. If you need to contact us or look at information in the developer site, you would click this and it'll open up the browser and add that to the particular information that's displayed in the browser, so you can go through our particular website. Next, previous, first, and last. Now in this particular screen, you can use either this area here. You can either go to a list view by using the navigation, and if you click next, previous, last, or first, this gives you the ability to move between screens. So for example, I'm going to click next, and you're going to see that it's going to go to record 2, and then it's going to disappear. This thing will disappear here. So let's do that. So now I'm in record 2. If I wanted to go to the last record, say for example there's 1,000 people in my database, I could click the particular thing goes to last, it'll go to the last record, and you can come back up. Or what you can do is use a find. For example, if I wanted to find a particular client and I don't want to scroll through here to look for him, all I have to do is go into find mode, start typing the name of the person or the company name or whatever field you want to use to locate that particular client. In most cases, you don't even have to go all the way through typing a complete in. So for example, if I put in TEST, it's going to find every record that has TEST for the name. For example, I could even put TES and it would still find it. So that's a kind of a shortcut for finding things. So this is covering all the things that you might run into in the basic usage of this screen. So for example, if I come back over here, if you want to modify at any time any of these fields, you can always go in there and change them. Now, one of the things you have to be aware of is you do not want to change the name of a client, because that's used to identify the client in all the records that you're looking at. It's a primary input. So once you put it in there, you do not want to change it. But the address can change. The city might change for some reason or another. And even it's the case of a company, they may have a new office phone or a new email that's added to there. Now you can always overflow into the comments box and put additional email information or other things that are related to this particular client, or you can put that in the UDF fields over here. For example, if I pop the UDFs, you can see the title and the data. You can do it 3 wide, or you can continue adding them as you go down. And if you want to see the individual portal record, you would click on the portal and it would show that particular portal where that data was added. Okay, and this is the list view, just to show you what a list view looks like. There would be multiple records in here that would be listed in rows based on the ID and the name of the particular customer. So you would see all those in there. So if I was going to do a find within this screen, I could go over here and I could start the find. I could add, for example, maybe something that's unique to one of these fields, either the name or the actual input data, and then go ahead and click on it. Now, if I want to return to that particular record, what I would do is I would click the arrow at the end of the screen here for that row, and I'd click it, and it would take me back here, or I'd click it one more time here, and it'd take me back into the record. You can either navigate in that manner, or you can use the navigation itself, but when you use the navigation, it's more of a general opening of those particular screens. So, for example, I am in this record. If I click UDF, it may go to that, but in some cases, obviously like a list view, it's going to show more than one record. Now let me warn you, in some cases in a row, you may need to delete maybe a row in something that is not pertinent to what you want to actually use it for. You would come to this particular screen and click delete. It'll warn you that you're going to delete it, and then you can go ahead and delete it. I warn that you do not delete ever in the booking screen here. You do not delete these records for each one of the individual customers. Do not do that. If you do that, you will destroy all the data that was stored in the other fields for this particular client. You would have to, if you wanted to get rid of the entire client for whatever reason, and I don't recommend that, you would go to the particular fields in all these different records and delete that customer record before you would delete this main record. But as I said, that's a last resort. Don't ever do that. It's not a good idea, because all the information about the bookings, billings, and payments and all that stuff would be lost for that particular client. You need that historical information, so whenever you do your accounting or taxes at the end of the year or whatever period you're going to do them, you need that information to create and use the reports that are in the application. For example, expense reports and stuff like that. You would want to use the reports in order to see that information that you need to account for a period of time or an annual basis. Like the expense report would be a good idea. You can see the summary of all the information, or you can use whatever period of time you want to look at. For example, if you're doing a 3-month, a 1-month, a 6-month report, you're able to do that by using a find in order to find that information. If you have questions, you don't understand something about the application, contact us through clicking here and going to the developer, then leave a message, or you can contact us through going to email at like in Vaughn, Clement, CLEMENT, @gmail.com. You can send me a direct email, especially if it's an urgent thing that you want to find out about. That will capture me wherever I'm at. I could be in my car, I can use my phone, or if I'm at my desk in the office, I'll go ahead and answer your question immediately. One thing I want to point out too, that you have free technical support. I tend to use Skype. It's probably the best thing because you can use it either on an iPad or a desktop computer, laptop, or any device that will support Skype. And that way we can go ahead and chat, or I can help you live online, showing you the actual screens and walking through each one individual screen and answering your questions. So if you have any other questions, we're going to move on, and then we're going to start explaining all the pop-up screens next. Thank you.